Minister and Premier of Ontario happily announcing the country's most populous province is now on board with the National Food Program. Now, under the 3-year agreement, Ontario will get $108 million in federal funds. That money will help feed an additional 160,000 kids. Ontario is the third province to reach a deal with Ottawa. Newfoundland and Labrador and Manitoba already have their own deals. Now, that may have been today's news, but Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was still facing questions about his proposed tax holiday plan that was announced yesterday, especially around the cost. The plan comes with a $6.3 billion price tag, and here's how it all breaks down. The 2-month GST holiday will cost the government $1.6 billion. $250 checks to every worker who made less than $150,000 in 2023. Well, that will cost $4.7 billion.
I'll let the bankers worry about the economy. We're focused on building opportunities for kids in a fundamental way, being there to support families, because an economy works when families are confident about the future. That's why we continue to grow the economy from the bottom up, from the middle out, while Pierre Poilievre talks about cutting supports for families, cutting the investments in the future that Canadians are going to be relying on.
And joining me now is Family, Children and Social Development Minister Jenna Sudds. Minister, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a great day.
It is, and I will ask you about today's Ontario School Food Program announcement in just a second. But first, I want to ask you about this week's major GST holiday announcement. What we had just heard from the Prime Minister in that clip said that your government is focused on Canadians and that he'll let bankers worry about the economy. It was in the context of what the government has done on affordability, but it really does make people feel like he's not considering Canada's economy as a whole. Is that how your government feels?
Of course, Canadians are always at the heart of all of the decisions that we are taking, recognizing that it has been expensive times that Canadians are living through. The measures that we announced yesterday, the HST holiday, as well as the Working Canadians benefit, are just 2 examples of how we're delivering relief for Canadians. Today's announcement, school food, is one more example of how we are centering Canadians in our decision making and recognizing the challenges that they're facing.
But with respect, Minister, he said it's up to bankers to worry about the economy. Is it not a core function of the government as well?
Again, I think everything we do, of course, has impacts. The impacts that I worry about on a day-to-day basis, of course, are how moms and dads, families across this country are faring. And the actions that we are taking this week are really focused on ensuring families get through the holidays, get the relief that they need this winter. As we know, there are many in this country who are still struggling as costs have escalated.
So I just want to be clear, is your government worried about the economy or not? Or are you leaving it up to bankers?
Well, I would point to our continued progress in this country, seeing interest rates cut 4 times. And the cost of living and inflation now at 2%, the target rate. So I would suggest our fundamentals are strong, and we've seen incredible progress, particularly over this last year. And that's really encouraging. It encourages me. I think it encourages Canadians. But Canadians still aren't feeling the impact of that progress, which I think is why these decisions, being able to deliver relief for Canadians now is really important.
And I want to talk to you about the impact of those, because together, the measures that were announced yesterday would cost roughly $6.3 billion. Your government has a self-imposed target of a $40 billion deficit. That's one of the fiscal guardrails that Chrystia Freeland, the finance minister, had set out there. So I think a lot of people are wondering, where are you getting all the money for this?
Well, I'll leave that. Obviously, we've got an incredible Minister of Finance, Deputy Prime Minister at the helm. These decisions are obviously well informed. And these are decisions that I think are really timely. As I said earlier, heading into the winter season, Of course, the holiday season, which is expensive for people across this country. And then, excited today as we move forward with the National School Food Program. Each one of these decisions and programs are, very much targeted, impactful, tangible relief for people here in Ontario and across the country.
I just want to be clear, though. Would you call giving 47% of Canadians a $250 check targeted? Because that would seem like it's not very targeted. It's going to a wide swath of people in this country.
So it is going to, the Working Canadians benefit is going to people across this country who last year made $150,000 or less. If you speak to these people, they identify with struggling. They identify with the rising cost of groceries and everything over the last year. These folks certainly have expressed some of these concerns. And I think it's really timely that we do have a targeted, I do think this is income targeted for workers benefit. We do lots of things for different folks in different circumstances. Of course, we have CPP and OAS to serve seniors, the disability benefit. There's a number of different programs to help people at different stages of their life. And I believe the Working Canadians benefit will deliver relief for folks who need it.
And the reason I asked this, Minister, is because back in May, the Prime Minister warned that if you send people more benefits, he said, quote, inflation goes up by exactly that amount. So what has changed in those 6 months to have such an about face on giving so much of these benefits to so many people?
Well, I would point to the economy, frankly. I would point to dropping or decreased interest rates. We've been leading in that regard amongst the G7. I would point to consistent decreases in inflation. Now, as I mentioned, being at 2%, which is the target of the Bank of Canada. These are strong economic fundamentals which enable us, frankly, to be able to move forward in a strong way, providing, again, targeted relief that is coming at a time when Canadians need it.
With respect, back in May, inflation was at 2.9%, and yes, it's at 2% now, and it was within that target back in May of the Bank of Canada, that sort of so-called sweet spot that the Governor of the Bank of Canada, Tiff Macklem, likes to speak about. So really, it hasn't changed that much in those 6 months, has it?
Well, I think Canadians would likely agree with me that 0.9, almost a 1% decrease in inflation is real. I would also look to interest rates, which have also decreased over that same time period, which for Canadians renewing their mortgage, Canadians looking to get a mortgage is a big deal. So these two measures absolutely have had a big impact in this short amount of time that enable us to move forward. At the same time, I would point to the work that we've been able to accomplish moving forward since the budget on our commitment to move forward with the National School Food Program. This is what I'm here in Markham today focused on delivering food for kids. Our agreement with Ontario will see an additional 160,000 kids in Ontario this school year having access to food at school. 9.8 million additional meals available to kids here in Ontario at school. This is delivering for Canadians. This is meeting the moment, and this is what I'm very focused on today.
And I will get to the food program in just a second. I just want to ask you one last question on this, though. Well, a number of people are seeing yesterday's announcement as a vote-buying exercise. When you consider the fact that 26% of parents are waiting for daycare spaces, and I know that's something that you're very concerned about, 6 million Canadians waiting for a family doctor, why not put that money that you're spending on it, well over $6 billion, into social programs instead?
We're making a number of investments, frankly, in the areas that you mentioned. That work hasn't stopped, and it continues to be a focus to make sure that Canadians
But with respect, wouldn't $6 billion go a long way to either one of those? With respect, $6 billion would do a lot of work in those, wouldn't it?
You know what? With respect, when I talk to Canadians, They tell me about their struggles. I hear it every day. And the measures that we are putting forward, these two measures, both the HST holiday to get through expensive times through the winter, through the holiday season, and a targeted working Canadians benefit for folks making $150,000. This is coming at a time that they need it, and there's no time like the present to be investing in Canadians.
Okay, on that food program, the initial goal was to reach 400,000 kids per year. So far, you're at half that goal. What are you doing to try and get more provinces on board?
Rolling up our sleeves, working with the provinces each and every day that have not yet signed on to get them across the finish line to ensure that this school year we are seeing more food delivered within schools.
One of the things you were talking about those other programs as well was how targeted they need to be. That's one of the criticisms, though, of this school food program, that it isn't targeted to give food to kids, that it will, unfortunately, give food to kids who don't necessarily need it. Is there a better way to help more kids that really need it instead of providing food to such a wide swath of kids to maybe some who don't really need it?
Well, frankly, if there is any child at a school that self-identifies as being hungry, I think it's money well spent and an investment worth making.
Okay, we're going to leave it on that. Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, Jenna Sudds, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.